All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show are my good friends Driftglass and Blue Gal. Driftglass and Blue Gal are of course, bloggers for the website Crooks and Liars, as well as their own respective badass blogs, and they are also, of course, the hosts of the great podcast, The Professional Left, which you can find at professionalleft.blogspot.com. Driftglass, Blue Gal, thanks so much for being on the show again.
We're so delighted.
Oh, we're thrilled, Matt. We love hanging out with you.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's been far too long, guys.
Way too long.
And so let's get right to it. I'm kind of curious of what your guys' take on the sequester madness that's going on right now. Just kind of your overall take on the mess that is there.
You want to go first, Driftglass?
Sure. Well, it's an engineered crisis. It's one of, I have lost count of the number of completely artificial, faked up, engineered, economic, let's punch the economy in the nuts crises that have been essentially rigged by the GOP. And I think they got kind of addicted to Democrats walking into the tiger pit. Hey, here's an idea. We're going to set this trap for you, and then you're going to fall into it, and we're going to win. And at some point, we said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. And that freaked them out, and they didn't know what to do. So now they're just throwing themselves into the tiger pit because they don't know what else to do. Someone needs to go in the tiger pit, so in they go. And it has put them in this weird position of arguing simultaneously. And usually they break this up by a couple of days or at least a couple of paragraphs. But by arguing simultaneously, the sequester is a wonderful thing, but it's a disaster. It was all our idea. Barack Obama made us do it. In the same sentence. And you can sort of put a frame around this as a purely political issue. Economically, as an economic matter, it's a disaster. It is blowing a hole in the bottom of a leaky boat to prove I don't know what point. But as a purely a matter of historical reference, 50 years from now, when people look at what happened to the GOP, why did they die? They're going to look at this little time period here, sequester, government shutdown, endless fights over the debt ceiling as, oh, they lost their minds. And they stopped hiding their crazy in the basement. They thought it was okay to bring it out in public because everyone loves us and everyone thinks we're doing a good job. And you see in the sequester the absolute blind alley dead end of what happens when you have to pander to the craziest people in America to win a primary. So that's my take.
Well, I think that's a big part of it is the primary voters are running the GOP or their fear of an imaginary primary voter, perhaps. It's hard to say at this point who the primary voter that they're afraid of is. But I do think that this wing or this part of the Republican Party that's taken over, certainly in terms of just the zeitgeist of the party, is addicted to drama. They are like tween girls. We have two of them at our house, 10 to 12, and it's one drama after the other. Oh, so-and-so is not talking to me. We have a bad relationship. We have this. And they want that kind of drama of the White House isn't talking to us. They're not providing leadership. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. And Boehner's back in his office crying and whatever. They're just, since they don't know how to govern, apparently, that's why they've decided to fill the space with a lot of drama that doesn't benefit anybody. And certainly it hurts them, makes them look really immature.
It does, but I want to go back to something that Driftglass said, because it's actually something that I kind of a point that I've been kind of pounding on my show the last couple weeks, and it's like I don't solely blame Republicans for this, because I actually think that Obama and the Democrats do deserve a lot of blame for this actual sequester mess, because they're pandering to right wing to the right wingers. Because I mean, again, Obama signed the sequester, and if for some reason that I'm sorry, I just don't buy the argument that Obama had no idea that it was possible that no deal was going to be made. If he really thought that, then he's an idiot, and I don't think he's an idiot. No. He had to have known that what's happening right now was a legitimate possibility, and so to strictly, and again, these are Republicans we're talking about, he had to have known that this was actually the most likely
scenario. Been wondering that about Obama, though, for 6 years. He had to have known the Republicans would bail. He had to know the Republicans wouldn't compromise. He had to know the Republicans were willing to go over the fiscal cliff. He had to know X, Y, and Z. And he always seems to come back to this. No, they're going to finally be reasonable, or their fever's going to break, was what he said during the election.
See, I agree with what Mr. Filipowicz just said. As far as his critique, I don't know whether or not the tactical use of that information has changed, because the conversation is no longer about how can we find compromise with conservatives. The conversation is now, you see, they're crazy. I told you they were crazy. By God, they're crazy. Look at what they're doing. It is now a matter of feeding them enough rope to repeatedly hang themselves and then stand to the side and say, I told you so.
But maybe, but then, I mean, look, the sequester is going to cost somewhere between 750,000 and 1 million jobs.
Right.
People who had jobs today are not going to have them in a month or two when all these cuts actually when all the actual things go down.
I know some of these people, and yes, you're absolutely right. They're going to get.
It's so if that's the political point he's trying to make, you know what? If I'm those 1 million people, being a pawn in this political game, which I'm not entirely sure that's even the case, that seems like a horribly cruel and awful thing to do just to win some political standing.
And how did we get the sequester, though?
How do we get this? Yeah, well, I mean, it's also Obama kowtowing to Republicans in the first place, and not, actually doing when it came to the debt ceiling, saying using the constitutional option on it, which I think he could have done. It's like for me, I am past the point of giving Obama really much any benefit of the doubt on this stuff at all, because, and if you even look at what Obama is offering. Again, as a progressive, is what he's offering worse than the sequester? I mean, all the options on this are pretty horrible. The sequester itself is horrible. Yeah. Those 1 million people or so who lost their jobs is horrible. But then again, if they somehow come to a grand bargain, is that better?
And then change CPI. Yes, exactly.
It's like, what are we rooting for? Well, it's like that's where it's so hard on this.
Let me be really clear. Nobody's rooting for this. No. But this sounds, in some respects, similar to the absolutely unified Republican talking point that the reason we were not able to get a deal is because of leadership. And then that's what I believe a reporter asked at a press conference. And President Obama said, okay, you tell me, what should I have done? Here's everything I tried. I got nothing. I got absolutely nothing. They can filibuster the Senate. They can block it in the House. I'm not a dictator. This is not drones. I don't get to do foreign policy. Pardon my language. In the continental United States, I actually have to get laws past people who have told me categorically, I will under no circumstances give you anything. In fact, when I put my name on something, they filibuster it. When I put my name on their own bills, they vote against them. Yeah. They hate me that much. So he put the question to the reporter who said, "But maybe if you were more leadership-y, maybe if you had the magic leadership unicorn and came up with just the right words, they would magically stop behaving like intractable dolts."